Hi guys, a very good day to all of you. We are meeting yet again for a very fruitful discussion, this time on one of the most important topics in the literature textbook, the Springs textbook, the fifth lesson, A Sunny Morning, an English translation of a beautiful Spanish play written by Serafin and Joaquin Alvarez Quinter. So the total weightage of this chapter in your board exam will be 8 marks. So it's a very important chapter, probably the most important among the 14 chapters that we are learning. A very beautiful play. So stay tuned, we'll be discussing this beautiful play. So in this play, basically we have 4 main characters, 2 main characters actually. The other 2 make a very brief appearance. So the 4 characters in this play are Donna Laura, Petra, that is Donna Laura's maid, Don Gonzalo, and Juanito. Juanito, who is a helper or a servant to Don Gonzalo. So these are the 4 main characters. So the majority of this play revolves around the exchange or the conversation between Don Gonzalo and Donna Laura. So the male protagonist and the female protagonist, Donna Laura and Don Gonzalo. So these are 2 people who are in their 70s, septuagenarians we can say. So 2 people in their 70s, and this play basically opens on a very beautiful sunny morning in one of the parks. Okay, and we can see that Donna Laura is being assisted by Petra, her maid, as she, what can I say, she settles in one of the benches in the park. So she has some breadcrumbs with her, with which she feeds the pigeons in the park every day. So from this we get to know that Donna Laura is a regular visitor to the park. So she regularly comes to the park, and she sits in that particular bench. Okay. Then we see the scene shift to Don Gonzalo. So Don Gonzalo is also another man in his 70s. He's a grumpy man with, say, very limited tastes, we can say. He gets frustrated and angry at the small things. So Don Gonzalo is also being helped or assisted by another person, that is Juanito. Juanito is the servant. So as Don Gonzalo and Juanito are walking through the park, Don Gonzalo notices that the bench where he sits every day. So he regularly occupies a particular bench. So today, unfortunately, the bench where he sits is occupied by some priests. Okay, some priests occupy his bench. So he's obviously miffed or angry with the fact that he cannot sit in his bench, and it would be rude on his part to shoo them away. So Don Gonzalo just walks away, and he notices another bench. Okay, he sees an old lady sitting on one side of the bench, and the other side of the bench is occupied. It's vacant. So Don Gonzalo, he sits on the other side of the bench. So coincidentally, it is the same bench in which Donna Laura is also being seated. So as Don Gonzalo arrives, he notices the old lady, that is Donna Laura, feeding the pigeons. So he does not like animals. He does not like interaction with animals also. He feels that animals are dirty and uncouth. So he shoos the pigeons away. Okay, he shoos the pigeons away. And obviously, Donna Laura, who was peacefully minding her own business, does not like the fact that Don Gonzalo shooed the pigeons away. So as soon as this happens, the first impression that Donna Laura has on Don Gonzalo is not very good. So first, the 2 of them meeting together, it does not end well, because they do not like each other's personality initially. Okay. So Donna Laura also notices some of the odd behaviors on Don Gonzalo's part, like he takes a handkerchief and he tries to polish his shoes with his handkerchief, and she tries to comment on that. She also comments on some of the odd behaviors of Don Gonzalo. So Don Gonzalo also tries to retaliate. They try to playfully, or let's say in a, so initially they start pulling each other's leg sarcastically. Yeah, so later Don Gonzalo, he takes out a book a book written by Campo Amor. And he reads the book aloud, okay? And he reads the book aloud, and due to his old age, he cannot see the lines properly. So as he reads, he struggles somewhere to finish the lines, okay? And what then happens? Donna Laura finishes those lines for him, okay? So he reads and he stops somewhere, he struggles to finish the lines. And Donna Laura, who is sitting far away, she finishes the lines for him. And Don Gonzalo is now surprised, okay? Why is that? Because how does she know the lines? So Don Gonzalo and Donna Laura, they both, they get to familiarize with each other, or they eventually develop a liking towards each other at this point. And Don Gonzalo, what does he do? He takes something called a snuff, okay? Snuff is a kind of an indulgent, okay? It's a powder, okay? So people used to take snuff and they used to snort it. They used to take a pinch of snuff and they used to snort it. It was kind of like tobacco in those days. It's an indulgent. So Don Gonzalo takes a pinch of snuff and he snorts it, and then he offers some to Donna Laura. Now, not everybody had the habit of taking snuff, but Donna Laura, she obliges, and she also takes the snuff that Don Gonzalo offers. So what does that tell us? They both have similar interests, okay? They both like the same writers. Here, Campo Amor, they discuss about other writers also, Zorilla, Becker, okay, etc. And they also have the same liking, that is snuff. So now as they discuss, they realize that they have the same likes and dislikes, almost similar. Then Don Gonzalo talks about how, where he was from, okay? He talks about how he came from this particular place in Spain called Valencia, okay? Valencia. And he was talking about his hometown, that is Valencia, and is reminiscing his childhood, thinking about his childhood, okay? And coincidentally, Donna Laura was also from the same place, okay? She used to live in a villa near Maricela, okay? The name of the villa was Maricela. So this was where Donna Laura used to live. It was also somewhere near Valencia. Now, as she mentions Maricela, something ticks inside Don Gonzalo, okay? He is also familiar with this name, Maricela. So now Don Gonzalo says, a long time ago, I used to like this girl, okay? Her name was Laura Lorente. Laura Lorente. She was also called the Silver Maiden, okay? These names are very important. She was also called the Silver Maiden. So she was very beautiful, okay, in her youth, and she had so many suitors, so many people liked her. Don Gonzalo was one of them, okay? And he tells how he liked Laura Lorente, and he explains to Donna Laura about their unfinished love story, okay? Coincidentally, Laura Lorente is none other than Donna Laura, okay? So now Donna Laura also realizes that the other person sitting there is her long lost lover from so many years back, okay? And now Donna Laura also says, yes, I also remember those times, but she also does not reveal her identity, okay? She wants to keep it a secret, a playful secret, let's say. So she says, yes, I am also aware of Laura Lorente, the Silver Maiden. She was a friend of mine, is what Donna Laura says, okay? So what does Donna Laura say? Laura Lorente is her friend. The Silver Maiden is a friend. So Don Gonzalo also plays along. What does he say? This lover I knew who used to love this Silver Maiden, he was a cousin of mine, okay? He was a cousin of mine, and Laura Lorente. So Laura Lorente used to call this cousin the gallant horseman, okay? The gallant horseman was what he was called. So their love was, how do you say, their love was very passionate. Okay, so as the gallant horseman used to travel through Marisella, he used to throw down a bunch of bouquets, I mean a bouquet of flowers to Laura Lorente. Okay, and there was a very playful exchange of letters and flowers for a very long time. So this love story, although they could not interact much, they could not talk much, through certain gestures like this, they used to describe or show their love to each other. But unfortunately, one fine day, this love came to a sad closure. So what happened? So Laura Lorente is from a very wealthy family. So her parents wanted to marry her off to a wealthy merchant, okay, a very wealthy merchant. So Laura Lorente was not interested, but she wanted, I mean, the parents of Laura Lorente wanted her to be married off to this wealthy merchant. And one fine day, as the gallant horseman, that is our Don Gonzalo, travels, he throws a bouquet of flowers, just like the other days. And this wealthy merchant, he catches hold of this gallant horseman, that is Don Gonzalo, throwing the flowers. Okay, and he insults him. Okay, there is a war of words. Okay, there is a war of words. They insult each other, and this in turn turns into a duel. Okay, so this turns into a duel. So what is a duel? Okay, so in those days, men challenged each other physically. Okay, usually with swords. Okay, so you have your Mexican standoff in the Wild West movies. Similarly, in those days, men challenged each other in duels. Okay, so nobles usually they engaged in duels, sword fights. So what started off as a quarrel embroiled into a duel. Okay, and this duel turned violent, and our merchant, that is Donna Laura's suitor, gets injured. Okay, now he's a very wealthy merchant who belongs to a very influential family, and him being injured means severe consequences for Don Gonzalo. So what does he do? He flees. He leaves his hometown Valencia. And where does he go? He goes to another place in Spain called Seville. Seville. Okay, where he goes into hiding. Okay, but what happens later? What happens later? So now Don Gonzalo explains this story saying that this gallant horseman was his cousin, okay, when in reality it is himself. So now Don Gonzalo is, from here on, Don Gonzalo tries to lie about the rest of the story. So what is he lying about? So after Don Gonzalo, after the gallant horseman runs off to Seville, he later, embroils in a war, or he gets drafted into the army, and he dies bravely in a war. This is what Don Gonzalo tells Donna Laura, when in reality it was something else. Okay, Don Gonzalo, within 3 months' time, he ran away with a ballet dancer. Okay, which means he moved on. But Don Gonzalo did not want to say this to Donna Laura. Why? He believed that Donna Laura, or the Silver Maiden, would have kept a certain amount of respect or love or adoration for her long lost lover, and he did not want to destroy that by telling her the truth. So Don Gonzalo lies to her, saying that he was drafted into the army and he died in the war. In the same way, Donna Laura also does the same thing. She believes that the other person has a lot of love and adoration for Silver Maiden. So she also lies to Don Gonzalo. What does she say? Soon after Don Gonzalo went, the Silver Maiden, Laura Lorente, used to go near the beach side, and she used to write his name, the lover's name, in the sand and in the rocks until the beach waters washed them away. So in reality, both are lying to each other, because both of them did move on. So Donna Laura also lies to Don Gonzalo because she wants him also to believe, or she did not want to destroy the respect that he also, or respect or the adoration that he had for his long lost lover. When in reality, though, they do realize that the other person is the long lost lover. That is the irony. Okay, they do not reveal to each other that they are the lovers, but they still very carefully craft fictitious stories and assume that the other person does not know the true identity of the person sitting in the bench. Okay, and as they discuss along, they finally have to bid goodbye because it's almost time. And Don Gonzalo, he gets up, and Donna Laura also gets up. Donna Laura's helper, that is Petra, arrives, and Don Gonzalo also gets up. And as they wave goodbye, they also indirectly ask each other, okay, if they will ever get to meet again. And Donna Laura says that she will be coming here the next day as well, sitting in the same bench. And Don Gonzalo also says that he will also be there to see her. And this time, the very same Don Gonzalo who did not like the fact that the pigeons were being fed offers to get breadcrumbs for the pigeons. So it's a very beautiful, beautiful, how do you say, scheme of things going on. And they bid goodbye to each other, and this beautiful play comes to a closure. Okay, so this is how destiny shapes the two lovers. Okay, who initially loved each other, who loved each other to the core, but destiny or fate had it that they could not live a life together, and Don Gonzalo had to go away. And if both of them did move on, okay, but the lives that they led, I mean, they could not complete those alternate lives that they led. And years later, okay, in their 70s, they get to meet each other in the same park in Madrid. And it is assumed, or it is upon the reader to assume, that there could be a second part or a continuation to this beautiful story. Okay. Now, as they bid goodbye, you should also notice that they feel that the other person may not accept them in their present state. Okay. Don Gonzalo feels that he's an old, grotesque-looking old man, and Donna Laura had certain image of him in his youth, this handsome young man. So he did not want to spoil that for her. In the same way, Donna Laura also feels that her present look is not acceptable, which is why she lies to Don Gonzalo. Okay, and both bid goodbye. However, they will meet again, and we may see a beautiful continuation of a once incomplete love story. So this is your play, A Sunny Morning. So we'll discuss the brief, most important points. Yeah, A Sunny Morning by Serafin and Joaquin Alvarez. The key events. Okay. So introduction and setting. A sunny morning. The play happens in a park in Madrid. Donna Laura arrives with her maid Petra and sits on a bench, scattering breadcrumbs for the pigeons. So she's a regular visitor to the same park, and she sits in that particular bench, feeding pigeons every single day. Don Gonzalo's entrance. Don Gonzalo arrives with his servant Juanito. He's irritated because the bench he wants is occupied by priests. Okay, and he reluctantly sits on the bench with Donna Laura. Initial conflict. Donna Laura and Don Gonzalo have an argument about the birds and benches. So as I said earlier, Don Gonzalo does not like animals. He finds them filthy and dirty, and he does not comprehend or understand, or he does not like the fact that people feed birds and animals. Okay, and this initially turns into a war of words between them. So they exchange witty, sarcastic remarks, both annoyed by each other. However, there is an unexpected connection. So through conversation, they realize they are discussing a romantic story from their past involving a woman named Laura Lorente. So as I said earlier, Laura Lorente is none other than Donna Laura, who is also called the Silver Maiden. Okay, and a man who was her admirer. So Donna Laura used to address this man as the gallant horseman. The gallant horseman is coincidentally none other than Don Gonzalo. Okay. So they have shared pasts. So they recount their versions of a love story. Laura Lorente, also known as a Silver Maiden, used to exchange flowers with a lover every day. Okay. This was a very beautiful love story. It was building into a very beautiful love story until one point, the point of conflict. like in the love stories in the movies that you see. There will always be a villain, right? So in the same way, there was a villain in this story too. The villain that brought this blooming love story to a close. It was the wealthy merchant. So this led to a duel where the lover fought and had to flee after wounding another man. The another man here is the wealthy merchant. Okay, the wealthy merchant was supposed to be married off to Donna Laura. And because he was a very wealthy and influential man, Don Gonzalo could not face the consequences of injuring him. Hence, he had to flee. Where did he flee to? He fled to this place called Seville. Each character exaggerates the aftermath, making the story more dramatic. So, as I said earlier, in reality, Don Gonzalo did move to Sevilla, but in 3 months' time, he ran away with another woman, a woman who was a ballet dancer. Okay, Donna Laura also moves on, but they lie to the other person. They say that Don Gonzalo says that this gallant horseman, that is Don Gonzalo himself, he gets drafted into the army and he dies in the war. He dies a glorious death in the war. Donna Laura also says that this person, the Silver Maiden, could not move on, and she used to write his name in the beach, in the sand and the rocks, until the waters washed them away. So they're basically lying to each other. The realization of identity. As they talk, both Donna Laura and Don Gonzalo realize they were Laura and Gonzalo from the past, but they do not reveal to each other directly. Parting agreement. Despite recognizing each other, both decide not to acknowledge their true identities. So why is that? So they do not want, they just playfully act like they do not know that the other person is the long lost lover. Okay, maybe because they do not want to make the situation a little bit awkward, or maybe in future they would reveal their identities to each other. But as I said earlier, they also felt that the other person had a significant amount of respect and adoration to them in their youth, okay, when they were very charming and good looking. So they did not want to reveal themselves and destroy that impression that the other person had. Parting agreement. Despite recognizing each other, both decide not to acknowledge their true identities. They agree to meet again and next day on the same bench, keeping the romance of the past alive in their memories. So the rest of the play is up to the reader to guess. You can weave your own story. Maybe Don Gonzalo and Laura met again. Who knows? So it's up to us to guess. Moving on. Symbolic gesture. As they part, Don Gonzalo picks up the violets that Donna Laura had dropped. Both characters, aware of each other's true identity, smile nostalgically, hinting at their shared past. Okay, so that is the play for you. Dramatic devices. So the most important dramatic device used in the play is irony. Okay, so you have situational irony as well as dramatic irony. Situational irony meaning Don Gonzalo and Donna Laura, former lovers, unknowingly meet again as elderly strangers and discuss their shared past without initially recognizing each other. So they both meet each other, they both talk about their similar past, the same stories. Okay, only halfway through the play do they realize that the other person is the long lost lover they are talking to. Okay, and that is ironic. What is even more ironic, they hide their identities and they assume that the other person do not know. So it gets all the more ironic, let's say. So that is a situational irony. They're talking to each other without realizing that the other person is the long lost lover. The other irony that they employ in the play is dramatic irony. Dramatic irony meaning the third person, that is we as the reader, know that they are talking to the long lost lover. They both are talking to each other, the long lost lover. So before they realize that they are talking to both of them are talking to their long lost lovers, we as the reader realize that they are talking to each other. So that is dramatic irony. So we as the viewer or the reader get to know that the other person is the long lost lover. So the audience knows that Donna Laura and Don Gonzalo are the long lost lovers before the characters themselves realize it. So that very beautiful way of using irony in the play. It's a very brilliant play. This play has the most weightage among the 14 chapters. So this is the detailed brief analysis of the play. So stay tuned for more videos. This is your DMG signing off. A very good day and all the best for your board exams. Thank you.